Hey, Robbie.
I think so. I have nothing to do with it, so that bodes well for it. Welcome, everybody, onto YouTube as we are here for our Wednesday class that shall not be named. We've got some wonderful people here with us. So Larry and Ron and Arlene and Michael. And of course, we'll be getting together in person in 3 weeks, but we won't have class the next 2 weeks. Next week, because I'll be speaking with Hadassah in Bluffton, and the week after is Thanksgiving. So looking forward to celebrating Thanksgiving. You guys going to be in town or go out of town for that? For Thanksgiving?
Be here.
Be here.
I will be here.
All right. Well, we're going to have just a little bit of talk. We've been talking a little bit about some of the messianic characters throughout the years in Judaism. And I think we're going to continue to do that a little bit more on and we're in person at the library. We'll talk a little bit about some of those who weren't Jewish. But as for the messianic characters, we talked a little bit about Bar Kokhba. We talked about Shabtai Zvi, two Jewish people who many thought were the Messiah. And today we're going to talk about the most recent person who has a messianic following. Now, again, as we mentioned previously, there's been a lot of messianic Jewish characters throughout the ages. Too many to talk about, but most of them don't gain a lot of traction or don't become famous or burn out really quickly. Shabtai Zvi, of course, was a very famous one, as was Bar Kokhba, and both led very successful campaigns for a short time. Bar Kokhba militarily, Shabtai Zvi spiritually, and for a short time both were considered the Messiah by a large group of people. However, both of them ended, of course, in tragedy in one way or the other. Of course, Bar Kokhba was defeated. He died before, and a lot of his followers were tortured. Shabtai Zvi ended up converting and taking a position within the Turkish Empire, the Ottoman Empire, for a few years before he was kind of demoted and lived out his life quietly. But he still has followers, funny enough, hundreds of years later. The Rebbe is a little different because obviously his was also a spiritual movement, as was Shabtai Zvi. It was not militarily, but his is a much more organized and also living in a free world, a free country. He's gained a lot of traction over the last year. So we're going to talk about him and those who believe he's the Messiah, but we'll talk a little bit more about him and all he's done. And so we're going to start off with Arlene. Why don't you tell us a little bit, because Arlene, for those of you on YouTube and who will be watching this later, don't realize she actually met the Rebbe, which for many people is the honor of a lifetime.
Well, what happened was our sisterhood on Long Island was invited to come to the mikveh. So we went. There must have been around 12 women. And afterward, we had an audience with the Rebbe. And he was standing up on a stage and we were seated, of course. And he started talking to us in Yiddish. And the only one that understood him was me, because my grandmother taught me Yiddish. So in other words, he's talking and I'm smiling like this and smiling. And so he stopped talking, he smiled at me, and he gave me the high sign. So like over the years, I've told that to different Lubavitch people that I've met. They practically kissed my ring each time, because you met the Rebbe, and he was really very nice to us. We were, we were like pretty far from him, women, and but he spoke in Yiddish and I understood what he had to say. And it was probably, I'd say maybe 60 years ago, something like that. I'm not sure.
That's a while back. And did he end up speaking in English as well once he realized nobody spoke?
Yes, he did. Yes.
He spoke English as well, yeah.
Yeah.
Where was the meeting?
It was in Brooklyn.
In Eastern Parkway?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I lived around the corner from there.
Well, my grandparents lived on Eastern Parkway, 816. And
Oh,
when they,
what was the
yeah,
rabbi's address? 777 or something?
Yeah, so like 770 or something, I think.
Yeah,
770, they call it.
770, right. The famous 770 buildings all over the world, I think
Right,
that's.
77, yes, right, yes.
Did it give you $1, Arlene?
No, he didn't give me any, no.
He was famous for that. He was famous for that. And again, you know, obviously you met him in Brooklyn because he never I think he only left Brooklyn to go visit his the graves of his father and his father-in-law. Other than that, he never left. So he pretty much was there all the time. And so we'll talk a little bit about the man who is, you know, certainly one of the most incredible people that anybody who's ever met him would say the same thing. So again, when we think of Chabad and Lubavitch, we think about these young rabbis going out all around the world and meeting with people and creating events and stuff. And that is not something that Chabad was doing beforehand, obviously, because it wasn't really allowed in certain places. That's all because of him. And that's why he has become so famous, because of his futuristic outlook. And also because he was just, you know, one of a kind in terms of brilliance. So let's just talk a little bit about him. Born in 1902 and was, you know, of course, born in Russia and lived in Russia. And his father was, you know, a pretty prominent rabbi, of course. His father was not the Schneerson who was the Rebbe before him. A lot of people think that that is not the case. He is a distant relative, I think, of the Rebbe before him, but he was born into a pretty important family. I said his father was a Talmudic scholar and a Kabbalist and a rabbi, and his mother was also a pretty prominent woman. She was from, I think, some sort of aristocratic family. So he had really good lineage. And his father was the chief rabbi of a place called Dnipro today, but it used to be Yekaterinalaskov. I can't pronounce it, but he was the rabbi there until the Soviets kicked him out and sent him somewhere else, to Kazakhstan. So he had two brothers, both who were killed and young, one by the Nazis, one by who died, I think, of a disease when he was fairly young. So this is a man who, from the very beginning, was labeled a genius. So he was a genius. He's one of these people who right away everybody knew he was. So he is a gifted Talmudist, Kabbalistic leader. But a lot of people don't realize he also studied outside of the Jewish world. So we'll talk about his Talmudic studies, but he also studied in Paris, he studied in Russia, he studied in America. So he was actually somebody who studied math and engineering, and so was a very prominent genius not only in the Jewish world, he also studied in Berlin. So this is a guy who was not just a Talmudic scholar, but was encouraged to do all sorts of things. So we know he's a genius, and so he is very prominent, and so he ends up going to, and he's written a lot. I mean, he's basically someone who by 17 has mastered the whole Talmud, which is very rare to happen. That's at least the traditional thought on him. So he speaks all these languages. He's the heir to a pretty prominent rabbinic lineage. He studies under some very prominent rabbis. And then he visits the Chabad Lubavitch Rabbi Schneerson. He's about 20 when he does this. And he, of course, meets him, falls in love with the daughter but they're married 5 years later. So he's a little older, and his wife is a little older when they get married. They'll never have kids. So they're going to be married about 60 years and never have kids. And so he is now the son-in-law to a very prominent rabbi whose last name is Schneerson as well, Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson. And so he, in very short times after meeting his distant cousin, and it's not like second cousins, it's probably like fourth or fifth, so really distant. He is given a lot of responsibility. Like his father-in-law sees what he could become. And so he becomes kind of his ambassador, secretary, whatever you call it, for a wide variety of reasons. He goes to Berlin and to study physics and mathematics and philosophy. He has everything paid for by his father as the Chabad rabbi. He is encouraged to study a wide range of things, but also to be a public person, even though he's introverted. So his father-in-law believes he needs to be a lot more outgoing. So he encourages him to be a public speaker. He, of course, befriends a lot of very prominent religious scholars. For us, the most famous would be Joseph B. Soloveitchik, who is, of course, the great modern Orthodox scholar of the 20th century, probably the most famous of the modern Orthodox scholars, and he becomes friends with them. Of course, they will both end up in America. He writes quite a bit on the Talmud. He is a Kabbalistic scholar. He keeps a diary, which is going to be very famous because they're going to find it after he dies. But of course, he's studying in Germany, studying in Berlin in the early 1930s, and we all know what goes on. So he ends up going to Paris and continuing his studies there. And there he studies mechanics and electrical engineering. So he's gone from mathematics and philosophy to engineering. So any questions? So how many of us have studied philosophy, physics, mathematics, and mechanics and electrical engineering and gets basically almost degrees in all of them? So I know Michael has, but has everybody else all done all of these things as well? So of course he's in Paris, and he's in Paris during the war, when the war breaks out, studying mathematics. And of course, Paris is not the safest place to be once the war starts. So we know what happens, because just a couple of days before Paris falls, he's able to flee to Vichy and later to Nice. And then he escapes in 1941 to Portugal, and then he's able to get to New York. So
the father-in-law was actually very instrumental then in furthering his secular education.
Oh yeah, yeah,
like,
very
which
much
seems
so.
to be a real departure from the way we see Hasidism today.
Today, yeah, but you
Yes.
also have to remember, today we're in a completely free society, where back then they were not quite in the free society of today. So, and I think his father-in-law, I think, reveled in the fact that his son was so brilliant. I think it's also, a case of, you have these brilliant children, you need them to be able to study a wide variety of things, or else they're not going to be satisfied. So I think it was a combination of probably both. He knew this guy needed to study and to use his mind. And, Chabad is not against the secular education that some of the more other Orthodox. And again, this is a while back. I mean, Orthodoxy's changed quite a bit as America has become more and more free. And so there's not a need now to be part of the world in America. You can be, ultra-Orthodox and kind of set yourself apart without worries of, terrible things happening. Or back then, people wanted to fit in, and this was one of the way to fit in, is to really get your education.
Did he work at all in engineering and any of the?
He
the
did a
things
little
that he
bit. He did
studied?
some of that during the
Actual
war.
jobs?
Yeah, during the World War II, in America, he did a little bit of it,
Oh,
but I don't believe he was doing very much of it beyond what he was studying. But that's a good question. I don't think he was working as an engineer until World War II, where he did some for the U.S. military.
wow.
So he, becomes a director of 3, organizations within Chabad, and his father-in-law gives him more and more responsibility. And of course, during World War II, everybody in America is trying to support the war, so he does use his engineering background to help a little bit during that. I think he did work on some, working on battleships, but I don't know exactly what he did.
So he actually came to America prior to the war then? He escaped?
No, the war already started. He
Yeah.
escaped during the war.
During the war?
Yeah, he left Paris right before it was taken.
Okay.
Got out of France right before it was taken. Ended up in Portugal, and then found a way to get here.
What happened to his father-in-law, do you know?
He made it here as well.
He did,
I
okay.
think so, yeah. Yeah, I know so. Yes, his father-in-law made it as well. So, in all this time, of course, he's publishing quite a bit. And in the early 40s, he creates the first program, what we know today to be really Chabad's, most famous program, which is the sending yeshiva students to places around the world to teach people about Judaism. And so he starts this during the war, actually. Of course, it'll become bigger and bigger, but that's when he starts with the Shlichot program, the Shlichot program. And we have one. You have one in Bluffton. We have one in Savannah. They're all over the place. He also went back. He also went back to Europe after the war and started establishing schools there, even for girls as well, and for displaced people and for refugees. So he was an ardent Zionist, although he never went to Israel, because obviously towards the last 40 years he never left New York. But he did support it completely, met with prime ministers and presidents of Israel. And of course, in 1950, his father-in-law dies. And so,
Just one question about Israel and Chabad. Many of the ultra-Orthodox don't support Israel, but they don't support the state of Israel because of the Messiah concept, right? So, but is that a practice of that's not a practice in the Chabad then?
No. What happened was there was a general consensus that you couldn't create a Jewish state until the Messiah comes. That was part of so they had to figure out a way around that. And really it was the first chief rabbi of Israel, Rav Kook, who came up with the idea that these socialist Zionist Jews are working for God to ready Israel for the Messiah. So this is the loophole that was created so that Orthodox Jews could support Israel. So some Orthodox Jews buy into that belief that Israel is preparing the way for the Messiah. And other Orthodox Jews say no, that you have to wait for the Messiah before you can name a Jewish country. So you have both those. So that's a difference right there. Chabad is on the first one, that they believe, support Rav Kook's belief that, the Zionists are paving the way for the Messiah. So Chabad is very big in Israel, obviously. And although the Rebbe never went there, but he didn't go very many places after a certain time. So in 1950, his father-in-law dies, and everybody knows who the successor is. It's not hidden. He does, wait a year to take it. A lot of people believe he was reluctant to. So a year after his father-in-law dies, he becomes the Rebbe. And and interestingly enough, his belief is that everybody should do the work to make the world better, and it shouldn't be just the rabbis or the rebbes who should do it, which is ironic because so many people think he was the Messiah, but he himself believed that people have to go and do it themselves. And he believed that Jews needed to be more offensive in going around the world to promote ourselves. And that's kind of what he set about doing. So, this is a guy who worked every day of his life from birth to death. Some say he worked 18 hours a day, rarely left Brooklyn, mostly met with people in his house. He would, and Arlene, what day of the week did you visit him? Do you remember if it was like a Sunday or a Thursday?
It was actually during the week. I don't remember the day actually.
Because like Sunday and Thursday were his days to meet with people, and he would like stay up all night talking with people. I mean, he could give lectures that would last 7, 8, 9 hours. He spoke 7 or 8 languages, so he could speak to politicians. He could speak to religious leaders. He could speak to almost anybody, and he was, everybody wanted to speak to him. Eventually, he had to stop those meetings, but they went on for years.
Do we know why they settled in Brooklyn?
I would just imagine that's where, I have no idea why they said, that's where everybody lived. That's where his father-in-law was. We have to ask why his father-in-law stopped there. I do not know.
He must have had a large following that came over with them.
Yeah, he did. Well, a lot of the following, though, he created through the years. Definitely had a following, but what we see in Chabad today is not what it was then. It's expanded incredibly. And there were a lot of other prominent, rebbes, rabbis, but this one really understood the idea of expanding more than most. So, and by all respects, as Arlene said, he was a very sweet man who, basically was very supportive of other people. And he really knew his stuff. Again, many believed he knew the entire Talmud backward and forward. He had no problem spending 8, 9 hours giving speeches, talking to people. He would talk to women, he would talk to men, he would talk to Jews, he would talk to non-Jews. He would send people to around the world. He sent Jews to Muslim countries to start up schools. He sent people to universities to represent the synagogue, to represent Chabad. He sent, obviously the tefillin and lighting Shabbat candles for women and putting on tefillin for men. That's one of the big campaigns they started that they continue to this day. Many people believe tefillin would have gone out of fashion if it hadn't been for the Rebbe who wanted everybody to do tefillin. So as you go to Israel, even, you go to the wall or any places, and you go around the world and you'll see Chabad that try to put tefillin on you. And that was his tefillin campaign, which is continuing to this day. He gave sermons every week on insight on the Torah, on Rashi. And he did that. He gave sermons every week until right up to the time he had a stroke. He had a heart attack. He came back from that fully, and it was the stroke that killed him in 1992, although he lived a few years more. He, as we know, started the Hanukkah campaign, which we now have in Savannah, where you try and get everybody to celebrate Hanukkah, Jews and non-Jews. So we have a big Hanukkah thing. I'm sure you guys have it there as well. Do you guys have a big Hanukkah thing in Bluffton?
They have a large menorah there, and the Chabad rabbi also, he goes to, he has a Hanukkah parade where he puts different Hanukkah on different cars, and he lights them up. And he drives through, I think, in Hilton Head. We had this one. It'll be like the 3rd year this year or 4th year. You have another Chabad rabbi that more or less caters to the SCAD students, don't you, in your area?
He caters to everybody.
Okay. But I thought he was predominantly almost like,
He does work with the kids. This
his
guy.
specialty seemed to be, to work with those.
Yeah, he works with
Good
them, but he works
scares.
with anybody else as well.
Speaking of that, Larry, I think that rabbi in Skid is from England, isn't he?
I think, yeah,
Yeah, I think he is.
or he's faking the
How
accent.
does he get from England to have a Chabad in Savannah?
Well, again, when you become a seminary student in Chabad, you were sent where you're sent. So how the process goes, I'm not exactly sure, but I think his brothers in
Right. Relatives.
Charleston,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
So they kind of send you wherever they send you. How you get there? I mean, he just got lucky to come to Savannah. You got lucky because it's a nice area. Bluffton's a nice area. So, but they do so many. There's a wide range of things they do. They do the Lag BaOmer parade. They do. The Rebbe worked with the trying to rescue Jews out of Iran when Iran was taken over in 1979. He, promoted working together with non-Jews, called it the Nohad Law type of campaign for, Nohad laws are the laws that Jews believe all human beings must follow. And of course, he had TV. He spoke on TV all the time. He had campaigns to study the Mishnah Torah, which is one of Maimonides' great works. And again, somebody mentioned the dollar bill. He used to give out dollar bills. He had he'd give out dollar bills and he'd tell people to donate it to charity.
Mhm.
So, an incredibly accomplished person. When you live 92 years and you're working nonstop for 80 of them, and you're a genius, you can get a lot done, and he did.
When
So
did the concept, though, of the relationship or the idea of him being the Messiah, was that something that he condoned, or did he
that's up for
encourage
debate.
that?
That's up for debate. Did he now again? He never claimed he was the Messiah, but of course, sometimes by not claiming something, you make it more obvious. So others say that he worked to enhance this Messiah mystique, and some would say that he was completely against it. In the Chabad world, some people think he's the Messiah, and a lot of people don't. It's not like everybody believes the same thing about him.
So I don't think they ever replaced Nearson as the grand rabbi.
Yeah, there's a lot of debate as who should replace. There was a lot of debate because he didn't leave anybody in charge after he gave all his everything to an organization as opposed to leaving it to one person. So the leadership went to the organization, and so there's not another Rebbe to follow him. But there are people in charge of it. So he is the tzaddik, what they would call the tzaddik, and nobody has come after. Like, whereas he replaced somebody else, nobody replaced him, which is, interesting because you're going through an organization that has been based upon having a celebrated Rebbe in charge for generations, and now they, of course, have a celebrated Rebbe who has died, still in many ways in charge. That's why his picture's everywhere. And so Agudas Chassidei Chabad, the organization, is really the one that runs it. There are senior Chabad rabbis that are director of it, obviously, but there's no Rebbe anymore, as he replaced his father-in-law. He is, and he had no children, so he can do it that way, as either way. But again, when it comes to the Messianic belief system, obviously, who was the first great leader of the Jewish world, who's considered the Messiah? I mean, would be, not Messiah, but the great leader was Moses. And although Moses had children, neither of them became major factors. So it's kind of traditional for a leader not to have character, not to have people who will follow him. And so what we see is this belief that he is the Messiah felt by some, not felt by everybody. And it is a very controversial belief because that belief itself creates tension with other groups. So, in other words, other Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox organizations do not believe the Messiah has come already. So whereas they practice Judaism in similar ways to us, keeping kosher, wearing garb, like their Polish ancestors, doing the holidays, not traveling on Shabbat, living life in a certain way, the idea that they believe in a Messiah separates them from the other Hasidim very, very severely. So, Michael.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to ask a basic question, and maybe you covered this last week when I couldn't be with you.
We covered everything last week. Every question.
Oh well, see, I'm
answered.
behind.
I forgot to put it on YouTube though.
And
so
Larry
there's no way
didn't
to
get
repeat
me
it.
up to speed, and I
There's
didn't.
no way
I
to
didn't
repeat
look
it.
at
It was like
YouTube.
one of
That's
those
not my
moments.
bad.
I always want you to be one step behind us, Mike.
Yes, yes.
I can't tell you
Okay,
everything.
Larry.
I had divine inspiration for 45 minutes, and that's it. And that's all it
But
is.
okay, the now that the comedy interlude is over, on you, the whole concept of Messiah, is, I guess it's an interesting one, but when we're talking about, and I don't really understand it, especially when we talk about, somebody being the Messiah, yet life goes on, and yet we're taught that when the Messiah comes, there'll be this, there'll be that, there'll be peace, So I'm trying to get my head around, why people believe that Schneerson and the others were Messiah. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and again, for this case, I mean, obviously, there's a belief that the Messiah comes and the world will be perfect. We'll go, heaven and earth will be combined.
Yeah.
So that automatically means, the Rebbe can't be the Messiah because that has not happened. So
is it a process? Or is it a process? That's a possibility that it could be not instantaneous, but a process over time.
And that's what Chabad has done. That's what Chabad has done. They changed the belief system to something more like that. Like he is the one who's creating the process by which the world will become peaceful. So he is the person who's doing it. It just hasn't happened yet. So, but also the, reveling in one individual who is a tzaddik is a very difficult thing to do in the ultra-Orthodox world because of this belief that the Messiah is going to come and perfect the world. It also is that there is competition within these groups as well. And, the Messiah is going to come from somebody in my organization, not another organization as well. And Chabad also has become an outreach to secular Jews and Jews from other denominations, which the ultra-Orthodox do not generally support. In the ultra-Orthodox world, Reform and conservative Jews are really bad. We tempt Jews away from the proper path. Secular Jews aren't as bad because they're not being tempted to go astray like what we're doing. And Chabad works with all groups, although they want groups to donate money to them and they want to do it, in their own way. But Chabad will work with Reform Jews and with conservative Jews and Reconstructionist Jews. And that is an issue because a lot of the ultra-Orthodox will not. And because they see it as competition. Larry.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention again, I think I mentioned the last week, a couple of weeks ago, the book called The Passover Plot. I don't know if you
Yeah.
read it, Michael,
Oh,
but
yeah,
it's really
I've
a
read it.
terrific mystery sort
I've
of
read it.
book,
Yeah.
based on, an idea that the guy had who wrote the book. I don't know who wrote it, that the whole thing was planned as far as what Christ did, even up to the time of the crucifixion, maybe not his death, but this whole idea, even his resurrection, of being found and things of that nature, because he knew he was learned, apparently. Jesus was learned. He knew the prophecies, which mostly were in Isaiah, I imagine, which foretold, the coming of the Messiah. So he understood kind of like, how the Messiah was supposed to come, or what he was supposed to wear, and, or how he was supposed to be entering it, and a whole slew of different parts of the prophecies, which I'm not familiar with anymore, but they're delineated really nicely in the book. And maybe we should read that book again.
Yeah, it sounds like a great book.
But and he had to come from the line of David. And I remember even in one of the book on Matthew or Mark, or one of them, is very succinct in that it specifies, that Christ did come from that lineage. They traced the Jesse
Right.
tree, so to speak, to try and show this. But that all goes out the window with the Chabad. I mean, we don't know whether or not Schneerson was from the line of David, whether or not he fulfilled some of these prophecies, and it's just the whole thing obviously is a hope. It's a dream, of a perfect world, and I think that's what the prophets were trying to say. Whether or not they had in mind that it was a person, or whether
Right.
it was an era or something, I guess that's my.
Yeah, and I think again, you would have to say that he was from the Davidic line, because there's no way to prove yes or no. So from their minds, he is. He has to be. So, and I think just the fact that he was doing so much for so long, and he was respected by people who are not Jewish, respected by he worked with Congress, he worked with the presidents, he helped get the year of education passed. He had, he was given a Medal of Honor, I think, after he died. Support for Israel. All of these things led people to see that he was being respected by everybody, not just people. Usually you get the respect from those who were part of your Chabad community, but he's getting it from everybody. And so they saw he was, somebody who was very good at everything. So this is a man who really transcended what he came from. And he spoke out against injustice, not against the Jewish world, but in the outside world as well. And, encouraged, right now there's Chabad in over 100 countries and over 1,000 cities. They have like 3,600 institutions. That other movements kind of follow what they do. So, he's a one of a kind person, whether you think he's the Messiah or not, or you support Chabad or not. He was, companions with, Soloveitchik, Jonathan Sachs. I mean, he worked with a wide range of people, which in the ultra-Orthodox world, you don't necessarily do. You stay within your own bounds. That's still kind of the unofficial rule. And he did not believe in that rule.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, maybe 5-6 years ago, or actually it was probably longer than that. My granddaughter in Jacksonville used to babysit for the Chabad rabbi, and she was telling us that in every single room, even the nursery, there's a picture of Schneerson.
Yeah.
They're all over the house.
Yeah.
And then with every single room, even the pantry had a picture of him in it. So this was interesting, I thought.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that there's a picture of him everywhere, almost like the Pope.
Yeah.
On all the Chabad organizations, a lot of people have pictures of him who aren't part of Chabad. So it's definitely, for those of us who don't believe in that type of, adulation, it's very strange. And that's what his naysayers say, that this guy wanted people to think he was the Messiah. and that's why he did all of this. Others say he was actually against that personal view, and he really didn't want people to do it. He didn't want this.
You know, it reminds me, and I'm trying searching for the name of the religion. It's a more modern religion. I think it was in Iraq or Iran that originated under persecutions only a couple of hundred years ago, and they have a temple, I think, even in Savannah, and the main places in Haifa, the Baha'i.
Oh yeah,
yeah. You're probably more familiar than I am, but you know, their concept seemed to be, if I understood it, I've gone to a few of their lectures, that every 100 years, 200 years or so, every so often, a great person comes along, a Moses, a Jesus, you know, and they they don't call him a Messiah, but they give them equal status, let's say, and irrespective of the religion. Muhammad is one, you know, so it crosses. Buddha possibly is another, you know, and they recognize all of these different faiths and saying they all have something to teach us. I don't know if Schneerson is emboldened in this pantheon, so to speak, of you
that's
know.
a good question.
I don't know, you know, they have a whole list of the people that that are revered in their you know.
I don't know either. We could ask.
But they do have a Baha'i, and in fact, I always wanted to go down there. I think they do have services every once in a while if they're still active.
Yeah, I've met some of the people from there through different organizational stuff. But yeah, the one in Haifa is lovely. I went to one in India as well.
Yeah. Oh, the gorgeous facilities as far as the beauty of the landscaping and things of that nature. But it's the idea of the concept, I think, is very intriguing.
Oh, it's very. And we did congregations and service. We always had representatives from there, and we actually had meetings sometimes at their place, which is on Waters. But I can look into that. I don't know how they look at the Rebbe. But you know, this is a guy who, you know, for everyone from Natan Sharansky to Elie Wiesel to presidents really venerated. And, you know, it's hard to get that kind of support from such a wide variety of places. And so it's one of the reasons. And now, years later, after his death, obviously, the movement he started is still growing and is here today. And it's all because of him, or, you know, obviously he had help, but he is the motivator behind all of it.
Well, what is your relationship? I'd say I know you're involved with you know, many religions and different organizations, and you know, particularly the conservative and the Orthodox and so forth, and you know, through the JEA.
Right.
What is the Chabad's relationship even between the Orthodox and the, you know, Reform and the JEA? Are they participatory in those services?
And you know, always depends on the place. In Savannah, yes. I mean, in Savannah, the Chabad is being sponsored by the Orthodox Synagogue, and so they have a rate. And so, you know, they work within. They work with the Federation. They got a grant to do the upcoming big Hanukkah event in the city, which we're going to participate in. So it just depends on the place. And, you know, we like to be supportive of everybody here. But there's also issues as well, as we know, because they kind of do their own thing, which sometimes, you know, upsets people. So, but it's always also up to the individual. You know, they send these young people, and some of them are very gifted, and others need a little help.
Yeah, we ran into a little bit of a strange situation, not knowing, you know, all of the beliefs and customs. And we were invited when Rabbi Mendel had twins here in Bluffton, and he invited several people. So we went over to his house, and for, I think it was the baby naming or the hair cutting. I don't remember what it was. It was one of the major ceremonies. And we brought a gift, and I think my wife had brought some books for the kids, you know, to give them. And the kids had animals in it, and
The kids had what?
The books, I'm sorry, had animals.
Oh, animals in it.
Pictures of animals in it, and the animals were what they said were not kosher animals, and they wouldn't allow the kids to have them.
Oh, interesting.
So it just seemed, you know, and all of the dolls, you know, after that we noticed, you know, the kind of toys that the kids played with were, you know, very very strict. So it
Yeah.
seems
Oh,
like
yeah.
they're a very open community, but I guess they are still very inwardly, um, literally, or try to be very literal about certain things that
Right. Well, when we say,
surprise me.
yeah, for what they do themselves, they are very orthodox.
Yeah,
What
they're
they
so
don't
out in the
do-
world, but yet they're so literal in their own
Yeah.
interpretation.
So they are not liberal in terms of what they do.
Right.
They're actually more
Yeah.
strict in many respects than other groups.
We've had classes with them in New Jersey, and it turns out that, the class is really not a discussion. It's really an opportunity for them to tell you what their belief system is and their interpretation of the Bible. So it's a little difficult to engage them,
Yeah.
because they have their thoughts, and they're not willing to compromise very much on their thoughts. They want to move you in that direction. They're not bullying you, but they want to at least try and move you in its direction of more traditionalism, it seemed like.
Yeah, in my experience, that's a very apt description. Larry, I mean, I agree, especially with the discussion lecture part of what you said. But it's very intriguing to me, Larry. You say that, they said the animals aren't kosher, but
Well, the pictures,
as long as you don't, as long as you don't eat them,
Yeah, that's a
there,
good
there's,
point.
Yeah.
there are no restrictions. I don't, it doesn't make any
right.
sense to me that
Yeah.
you can't look at a pig or a boar or a snake.
Can't deny
I
its
just don't get
existence,
it.
right? Yeah,
I mean, the Torah mentions all these animals. It's very strange to me.
yeah, I don't know if the Torah does mention all of those animals, do they? I mean, they mention them by classification of,
Well, they mentioned some of them.
But
Yeah,
obviously
no.
can't mention every animal.
No, they can't. They didn't know of everyone, but they
No.
give general, basically on land, you have to have cloven hoofs, and chew your cud in the area.
Yeah.
They assumed
Yeah.
it was that he can't be a bird of prey, and if it's in the water, fins and scales. But yeah, I mean,
Well-
again, what Chabad does is amazing. They're controversial in some ways as well. Some people are very supportive of them. Others are very against them. It's just, it's an interesting organization to say the least.
Tell them what he did.
There was a film, I think it was a
Um,
film,
the,
about a guy who has a pig farm I think it was in Israel, before Israel became a nation. It was a Jewish guy and a pig farm. Did anybody see that?
Mm-mm.
It was gosh, I just don't remember
Was it
the
Shabbat? Was it
title. I don't remember
Topol?
the
Was Topol
details.
playing the character?
One thing that always got me is
I
that
don't know. I don't remember.
if you take a pig, it has a cloven hoof. The way it eats is the same way a cow does. Why isn't a pig a kosher animal?
Doesn't chew its cud.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have reason. I mean, there's different debates as to why chewing your cuds is so important.
He's also a scavenger, I think. A pig will eat just about anything. He'll eat dead carrion, and whereas I don't think a cow would. Cows eat the grass and things.
I
of
got
that
you.
nature.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there's some justification for it, but
It's not discussed in the Torah why it's done this way, but there's years later that's why.
what amazes me about
Chicken feed
Chabad
has-
is I don't know if this is true of all the rabbis, but the few that we've seen is when you go to their home, obviously they've got a wall full of books, and you mention a subject, and the immediate reaction is they run to the wall, they pick out a book, and they show you the Torah commentary or the midrash on that, or and it just is astounding. I mean, it's almost as though they've got every piece of the Torah or midrash committed to memory.
And some have a lot of it too. I mean, so that's it's an interesting way of living. And again, they've become so well known that it's kind of taken Orthodox Judaism into more of the prominence in many ways, because people see them all over the place now.
Where would you say they fit into the specter of Hasidism?
Well, I mean,
Is that the broader term of
Yeah, it's a broader term. They wouldn't be
under which
considered
Chabad is a
Nazis.
type of Hasidism?
They're a breed apart. They're considered apart from that because of their outreach and what they do.
Yeah,
Their fundraising. I mean, a lot of those organizations, are very insulated. Now, Chabad is very much, they're insulated in terms of their inner stuff and what they do together, but they're also outreach, trying to bring people in. So it's a very different philosophy. And a lot of the ultra-Orthodox, the Hasidim, are not supportive of that philosophy. So it just depends on the individuals also.
yeah, they are very engaging, and I think
Yeah,
they
they're trained to be
are,
engaged. They're young.
they're very good salesmen.
Yeah.
And very, very good for the young people. They run some very good youth groups. I remember when we were in New Jersey, they always had some youth groups going on, that sort of competed with the youth groups in
Right.
the conservative movement we were part of at the time. But
It's funny, before Rosh Hashanah, they had a challah baking event. So they're going to teach women how to bake, but they wouldn't allow men.
well, it was the rabbi's wife that did it. I think that's
I know.
why, yeah.
I mean,
There's 70 women, that came to
Yeah.
it. They did it over here in the
Yeah.
hotel. So yeah, they're making some inroads here. Yeah.
I mean, I like to bake challah.
Well, there's a separation between men and women, so you can't do certain things together.
I know.
You could have gotten an exception, Michael. Did you try and go?
Oh.
Did you?
Pull
No.
a skirt out of
You could have charmed your way in.
from
You
Eileen's
could have charmed
wardrobe.
your way in.
Do a men's challah baking night. Well, that's a little bit about them. Any questions or thoughts?
I just have, Larry, have you received any communication from anyone else who's coming on the 30th?
No, I haven't. I don't think we've even publicized it that much, have we? We haven't.
I sent out one email, but I'll send out another one.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're just gonna meet there. Are you gonna send another email out?
I'll send one out. So far,
Yeah.
Michael, you're out of town, right?
No, the 30th. I thought I wouldn't be here today. I'm
Okay,
I'm
great.
in on
So
the
we've got at
30th.
least 5 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should be able to get a few more people. I don't know. I've mentioned it to a few people, that are not regular members of the group. Hopefully the people that are members of the group. Plus, the idea was also then we go over to, if anybody wanted to, there's a Mexican restaurant in the area there that, Rabbi hasn't had much Mexican food since he's come back from Texas. Or there's a Chinese buffet, I think, that's not too far from there, that has a nice, a little sushi area there. So, we can go out for an early dinner or something like that after the meeting, or early lunch, after the meeting and stuff like that together.
That's great.
So yeah,
Looking forward to it.
it was just sort of an option to try and get everybody together. And
Yeah, right.
it's difficult for us to get together at people's homes now. People are getting a little elderly and more difficult to to set up and clean up and things of that nature. So hopefully it'll be an opportunity, to do it. And the library's been very, very good to me with my opera group, so they've been, very nice about setting aside, the rooms and things like that. So
Hopefully, the people that used to come to the Wednesday class perhaps would show up there.
And then hopefully we'll set up the Hanukkah party. I'd like to do a Hanukkah. I know some people said they couldn't do it. They wanted to do it the first week in December, but I think we've already set it up. So we'll try them for a Hanukkah party as well.
yeah, we could talk about that at the meeting as well.
Yeah.
Sure. But I mean, you have an interesting subject as well. I mean, the rabbi's going to be continuing the talk on, the messiahs and the non-Jewish messiahs. So, I think that may attract some people as well, just from an interest point of view. You're also talking, are you talking in Ollie this semester? You're doing your talk on?
Yeah, I'm doing the year 1967 again. That's what.
When is that? That's pretty soon also, isn't it?
Let's see when that is. I hope I didn't miss it.
Okay.
Maybe in December. It's got to be soon. I haven't taught this semester yet. It's on December 5th.
December 5th, okay. That's right here in the Bluffton campus.
Yeah.
Right, just in Bluffton here. Yeah. I mean, we could also, you know, people wanted to, we could use that as an excuse for getting together, and they have a pretty nice cafeteria there. What time is your talk, Rabbi?
My talk is at 10, so I'll be finished at 11:15.
Yeah, yeah, we could go over if you're available, if people are
That'd be
available.
great.
We can go over to
I'll put it on
to the cafeteria, and they have a you know, nice salad bar
That's a
and
grab.
sandwiches and things like that. They're pretty good selection. And you know, it's just very, it's if you've been to the university there, it's a nice area.
Yeah, I'd love to go to the cafeteria. I haven't been to I usually go to the room and then I leave.
Oh, no, if you're available, sure. Yeah, I don't, because there are usually a number of people that go to you, you know, you usually get a big crowd for that anyway, and I'm sure there was a large number of people that are probably members of our group even.
That'd be great.
Okay. And you do 1967, right?
Yeah, they wanted me. I guess it's 55 years, I guess, or so. So I did, I guess, 10 in 2017. So I'll change it up a little bit. I guess 67 is considered.
Yeah.
You know,
You might want to send a notice out to everybody about that as well, you know,
Yeah.
if you want to include that, or, you know, at the
put
same
that in
time,
there.
when you talk about the November 30th, that, you know, we might see you 3 weeks in a row then. Or to the 30th, December.
I'll put that out. Just type that out before I forget.
November 30th is Wednesday. Yeah. I don't have,
November 30th is a Wednesday. We decided to keep the same Wednesday, and it's also going to be around 10:30, the
Yeah.
same time. And then, you know, people, we can go out for lunch together.
sure, that would be
I think
nice.
it's a good-
Yeah,
great
That
idea.
would be very nice, sure.
Yeah, so that's the one at the library, and then the one, if you're interested in Ollie, that's, you probably have to be a member of Ollie in order to attend the meeting there.
But you can come for lunch afterwards.
But you could come for lunch afterwards at the, you know, the cafeteria, and then we tentatively have the meeting scheduled for the date anyway, for the Hanukkah party and stuff.
Yeah, we just got to find a place to do it. If we can need to, we can do it at the library as well.
We could do it at the library, or maybe if people wanted to, we could even go into Savannah. I wonder if everybody would chip in, if the caterer there would cater it for us. If we
Oh, yeah,
wanted
that's a
to,
great idea.
you know,
He's available.
if he's
can
available
ask him.
for it during the week or something. And I mean, everybody could be invited. It doesn't only have to be our group.
I gotta check my, my VA schedule, because I just started physical therapy at the VA. in Beaufort.
Okay.
Well, we'll tentatively keep the Hanukkah party that Wednesday, December 14th. And we just figure out the place as soon as we, you know,
Okay, and there's a pre-Hanukkah party on Sunday with all the latkes making.
and we have a Hanukkah party here on Friday night. That
Oh, you
Friday.
do? Oh,
And
yeah.
then that's our big Hanukkah party is on the 16th. And there's the Chabad one on the 18th.
I'm sorry we missed the Jewish War Veterans program the other day.
That was excellent.
Was it? Yeah, I'm sorry we
It's
missed it.
excellent.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was
I'll
really
tell you,
fun.
Rabbi, I went over to Jessica, want to wish her a happy birthday, and just to tell her how meaningful it is that she adds so much to the service when
Yes,
she's
she
playing.
does.
I mean,
It's
The
amazing.
organist as well. Yeah, I think the
Oh,
combination.
this is
of
great
music
as well. Oh yeah, they work really well together too.
Yeah, yeah, it's very nice. Very nice. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. It's a pleasure. So no class the next 2 weeks. I'll send a note out about the in-person one. Anything else you need, let me know.
okay.
Hopefully we'll see you at the 16th at the Low Country Presbyterian Church for the
Oh, yeah,
rabbi's talk on anti-Semitism.
It's
On the
next
16th,
next Wednesday.
week from today,
Week from
right?
today, I
Week
think.
from today,
All right, and I'll
it's
see you
at
for
1
lunch at
o'clock.
11 o'clock.
Right, great. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody. You stay
Bye,
safe.
everybody.
Take care, everybody. See you soon, at least by the 30th anyway.
All right, have fun, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take care.